The topic, it's an open house, a candid talk with the top developers of India, decoding the retail CEO's concern 2022. And the moderator for the session is Mr. Pankaj Ranjan, COO and Joint Managing Director, Anurag Retail. Can we have Mr. Pankaj on stage with a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen?
So we have it's a esteemed panel of some eclectic developers of real estate, particularly retail real estate, mixed-use developments as well. I think what we will do is we'll keep this session more of insights from this panel, because I think what I was talking to all of them before we came onto the panel in the speakers lounge, and we were talking about and saying, if we just take up some of the malls which Abhishek, the first mall Abhishek built was 17 years back, and it's been operational for 17 years. Select City Walk, Yogeshwar? 15 years. So, you know, there's a huge amount of experience of this time frame which we have, which you can share here. Particularly in the last decade, which you're talking about, lots has happened. We've seen through 2 dips. We've seen a pandemic. We've seen consolidation in the business, both in the retail side and the real estate side. We've seen consolidation in the retail side. So there is, I think, a lot of insights which we can learn from and hear from each of you. So let me start with you, Abhishek. Since you, on the panel, you're the one who built the first mall of 17 years back, and one of the first malls in the city, actually, NCR. It was probably one of the first 3 malls in the city?
After the ones in Gurgaon,
Yeah, so it was really, the NCR market was really started.
There used to be a destination mall in Faridabad, if you guys remember, where we used to go to go-kart.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, you know, Abhishek, if you look at the journey for all these years, then you built that, then you built the second one in Rajouri Garden, which in Tagore Garden, and then you're built in Dehradun, you built more malls, you're building in Delhi NCR as well. What's been really if you give us some key highlights of what's changed over the last decade or so in retail?
So to start with, the first center that I did was about 5 lakh square feet, in which I cut up about 200, 250 odd shops. Anchor के नाम पे 1-2 anchors होते थे, West Side, Hyper के नाम पे Spencer and Big Bazaar, ये होता था. So when I started taking the brochure to a lot of retailers, they asked me, do you know that are there 250 brands in the country? There aren't 250 brands in the country. That made me realize that कुछ गड़बड़ हो रही है. So उस पे working हुआ, converted mom and pops into organized retail. That was a big one at that point in time. Went to Lajpat Nagar, picked out retailers from there, put them into organized shopping centers, gave them the confidence that, you know, how this will work. Because there was no other way to fill that kind of space at that point in time. And it's not like competition wasn't there. There was competition. No, there was EDM Mall, which was just about a kilometer away from us. So in a neighborhood where there was no retail, there was suddenly more than 1 million square foot being built and delivered in the same year. So it's anybody's guess how the neighborhood is going to react. One, and how both the developers are going to bring in their tenants. So that was the learning in the beginning. Also added to that was strata sold, malls, Dukane Big Gayi, all of that, and how that worked. We all know that story. Then came the second wave where we were doing lease centers, and we were doing, so there were enough brands, but the bigger, they didn't know what areas they wanted. Like somebody who was looking for 2,000 square feet, somebody was looking for 3,000 square foot, 4,000 square foot, did not have any history on how much area would actually work. It took about 4-5 years, I think around 2008 to 2012, where people really figured out what is the right size for their format. And it kept changing. So somebody who required 1,000 then maybe requires 1,500 now or a 4,000 now. So that was a second big learning. And of course, design was another big learning. Post our first center, we realized how important it is to plan the customer flow, the parking flow, movement towards the food court, exit from the cinema, importance of entertainment, and very lately, importance of food. All of that, again, over the past 1 decade, we have learned. Then cinema used to be a big piece, still is a big piece. We started where we used to do larger cinema, Audis, seats close to 300, 400, 450. The first center that we did had a 450-seater IMAX and 250-seater, 4 other Audis. Slowly, over 5-6 years, operators started saying कि number of screens बढ़ा दो, छोटे कर दो, make a 150 Audi, and number of screens बढ़ा दो so that we can get more shows into the system every day. From there, it went on to megaplexes कि 12 screen बना दो, 15 screen बना दो, 18 screen बना दो, बड़े छोटे, IMAX, PXL, everybody came out with different formats. And it's an expensive thing to build. Cinema is an expensive thing to build. And the other thing is that once you've built that cinema, you can't do anything with it. It's built, it's built. So going by at least thinking that the operator knows what he's talking about and tells us, and we build. So from there to now, where they're again saying कि 5 screens कर दो, 4 screens कर दो, 200 seat कर दो, that's enough. I don't know if this will change 5 years from now. So the big learning from there is you have to know what you're building, you have to know your catchment, you have to know the kind of shopping mall. Your shopping mall will look at least 25 years from now, if not 50. If you know all that, then you have to build according to what your study says. So all of those. Then we also saw the rise and decline of hypermarkets, the rise and decline of number of operators of hypermarkets. And today, we all know the number of operators of hypermarkets in the thing.
Abhishek, you know, and this is something which you mentioned to me when we were having an informal chat. When you were planning your main, I would say the first lease center, which is your Tagore Garden Pacific Mall. While planning, you had signed up a very large international hypermarket chain, which had probably taken 70, 80,000 square feet, 100,000 square feet.
It was 60,000 square
60,000
feet. They were not very happy about it because they had come from a background where they said 1 lakh से नीचे hypermarket नहीं होता, वो supermarket ही होता है. So, but they also sold 20 types of toilet rolls. In India,
toilet roll is only one.
is one.
And that also selectively gets sold. So I'm saying you planned the hypermarket on the basis of an operator. But by the time you got built, you had already changed 3 operators. So when you opened, it was a different operator, different size. How do you change that format? Because today, I think the consolidation, which is a very important factor when you're talking about a vision, particularly is like one big factor which you mentioned is that you should know, don't rely on the operator to tell you what you should be building. You should also know your catchment independently, study it well to know what will sustain in that market. But suppose you've already done something, then how do you recoup and come back and change it?
So a good thing and a bad thing about what happened was that they gave us the knowledge on what basic infrastructure a hypermarket would need. For example, they were very clear that for a hypermarket, if you don't do a grid of 10 by 10, it won't work. Or at least 8 by 10, if not 10 by 10. If you don't have a loading unloading bay of like 5 big lorries, it won't work. Separate service entry, staff entry, service elevator. So all of that logistics. That was the good side of it. But the moment they left the country and we realized, abhi 60-70 हजार फुट का क्या करने वाले हैं? So that was the difficult part, which वो Indian जुगाड़ and cut किया, जो भी किया, but we managed to get in 2 brands in it, and I think it worked for the better for us.
So you can actually remodify.
Yeah.
And at what stage do you take that call of remodifying? During the construction phase?
Remodifying, Pankaj, to be honest, अगर मॉल को 10 साल भी हो गए चलते हुए और आपको remodify अगर जरूरत है मार्केट की रिक्वायरमेंट तो करना पड़ेगा.
So while construction, should you keep in mind that there could be changes which have to be
So
continued
what
done?
we do now is, for example, we make sure that our slab strength is to a certain level. That अगर मेरे को maybe 10 years down the line मुझे लगता है मुझे hypermarket on the 3rd level भी अब चलने लग गया है. So my slab should be able to take that load. There are notches in my floors in anchor boxes that if 10 years down the line, if I want to club those 2 floors, I know कि यहाँ पे मैंने escalator का provision किया हुआ है, मैं यहाँ पे escalator डाल दूँगा या यहाँ पे मैं lift डाल दूँगा. There is already a provision in my in the centers that we are building that later on, if I want to put a travelator from my basement right for people to walk out on the ground level to the taxi, there is a provision of a travelator that I have already done. If there is no hypermarket, I won't put the travelator, but I will do it whenever that is required.
So building flexibility.
Flexibility.
So coming to you, Yogeshwar, 15 years, one of the most successful shopping centers everyone considers Select as a benchmark. And you continuously continue to upgrade. What's the next stage of upgrade which you see is coming in the retail shopping center industry?
Thank you very much, and I really want to thank each one of you for staying back. I'll say similar things with my own words, I mean slightly different words. So in 15 years, we have also passed through similar set of issues. For example, having not enough brands to fill the center, then to having too many brands and not being able to accommodate, and not having enough anchor spaces at that time, and now having a lot of anchors available to fill the spaces. So it has been a very interesting journey, and the biggest challenge I feel at this moment is to how to take a long-term view in a short-term world. The world has become so short-term, but I mean, as a shopping center professional, we cannot take a short-term view. If we start taking short-term views, I mean, it will be disaster. So we still have to struggle to take a long-term view of all the situations and still managing the short-term situation. And some of these things would be evolutionary. Things evolve on their own, and we should give time to evolve. But at the same time, with the onset of e-commerce, few things have become revolutionary. I mean, evolutionary versus revolutionary. Evolutionary, I mean, we took some time and new brands entered the country. But now where we stand today, few decisions have to be revolutionary. I mean, you can't do it in a slow manner. You have to really match up with the pace of the demand of the consumer. So now, next set of like e-commerce has definitely grown, and for right reasons, and it will continue to grow. We see all these numbers. But this is also established that shopping centers will also stay in business for a long time to come. I mean, it is a need of the society to have a good shopping center. Now, how do we increase the pie? Because we have limited real estate, limited brands can come in, limited merchandise can come in, limited parking spaces. So there are challenges attached to each location. So now how do we bridge and use the technology to really increase the pie for the retailer? And that's why the business models have to be reworked. Now, we cannot have traditional business models because now, for example, even within F&B, like the aggregators come in. So if X percentage is coming to us earlier, now within that X percentage, even the aggregator takes some percentage. So it makes very difficult for a retailer or a F&B operator to pay 2 percentages on the same order. So business models have to be reworked. So we have to be agile. And there are many courses if you go on art of public speaking, but I'm sure most of us have not come across any course which is art of listening. So I have enrolled myself in a course that how to listen. I know it's a very difficult habit at this stage of my life. I mean to start learning a new. Thank you. So I mean art of listening. If you really listen to the retailer or the people involved, then you really understand where they're coming from. And I mean there is a limit you can adjust to that. But if you attempt, so maybe having one mall has really helped us so that we can devote more time to listen to more focus. And now from mini shops to we are becoming more anchor heavy in a way. Like we have H&M, Zara, mini anchors like Chroma, Fab India, now Nike is signed, Adidas is signed, West Elm, some new brands. So suddenly the destination shopping is also playing an important role in a shopping center.
So, and Yogeshwar, you said like the evolution is going to still keep coming as well. Now I remember at one time Select's focus was always, strategically was always to do more representation of brands with smallest possible store to drive efficiency. Today, you're changing the business model to slowly move, or I'm not saying fully, but you're moving to saying larger experience stores. Is the customer's journey also changing or is it because you're forced to do it because there is consolidation of retailers happening?
So it's a combination of two things. One is that, like for example, let's take an example of Nike store. Now they're only displaying one sport or two categories in the store. And their India expansion plan says that they have to represent 5 categories, for example. So they need bigger space to represent. And instead of having too many small stores, they would like to consolidate themselves into a large store and give full attention to that store. So it's a combination of retailers' requirement, which is in line with consumers' requirement, which we have to really, and for us also it is we have to maintain a balance because as we become more anchor heavy, so there's some compromise on the rentals because the smaller shops pay higher rental per square feet. So that's why I said that business models have to be really looked at, and we do not hold on to the conventional thinking कि एक बार lease कर दिया तो कर दिया. You have to really keep an eye on what is working, what is not working, and what is the alternate options available. That's the key.
Coming to you, Khair, there was an era when India used to shop on high streets. Then came a time when India started building something called shopping plazas. They were not malls, they were shopping plazas. They were multi-storied building. There were multiple shops put in various formats. Somewhere there were 350 shops, or they were sometimes larger, but some of these came up in, these are about 50, 60,000 square feet buildings. Then we suddenly went to a jet age of building large size box-like malls. So suddenly we jumped to 5 lakh square feet, to a million, to 2 million square feet malls as well, and people are talking 2.5 million square feet malls as well. But again, we've come back to a age wherein there is now multiple formats of retail come in, and all of them showing some signs of opportunity. It's not that the only box-like malls are working. They're showing that there is high streets also is getting revived. But there is a new age of retail which is coming, which is particularly the expertise which you represent in as an organization as well, is mixed-use development. So it's got offices, it's got retail, it's got F&B, and there are open format retail as well. Whether it's under offices above and retail below, or it's just a purpose-built, purely open format retail. So are there these formats ready to roll out, and long-term play is that, or there's an opportunity to build these retail?
See, Pankaj, I represent World Trade Center, and World Trade Centers are mixed-use developments. So when we came to India, and we're pretty young in India, we came to India in 2000. I mean, the first World Trade Center was Mumbai, one which was in 1978. But now we look at the new age World Trade Centers. We broke ground in 2018 with the retail, which was in Chandigarh. So the Chandigarh is the retail that we would talk about in the mixed-use development, and which is a story that I would like to talk about. The first thing was that retail in India is very dynamic. When we did our research in India of the retail, we realized that this was a very, very dynamic real estate asset class, not only from a perspective of an investor, but also from the perspective of brands. So we needed to have our design element also, which was very, very dynamic, which would meet the requirements of both the large anchor as well as the small retail. And as a World Trade Center, the objective is to become a marketplace. The objective is to become a business hub. We are not real estate. We are beyond real estate. That's what we like to believe, and that's what we like to actually portray and live up to that objective of World Trade Center, to be a market hub and a business hub. So for us, having a varied business model of retail was very, very essential. One, it would draw the footfall from the office, the catchment, as well as the various events and various forums as a World Trade Center, the business forums, the business membership activities that we would do to drive in that. So we need to have, we've seen, especially in World Trade Center Chandigarh, we have the plazas. We have retail which have got atrium, which has got very large floor ceiling height. We've got very normal retail space which caters to an anchor, which caters to an MBO, which can also be converted into small retail spaces. So it's a very, very design. And we have taken this largely because World Trade Centers across the world is a 50-year-old organization. It is an organization which has always been mixed use. We have very good success stories of retail, like World Trade Center Seoul. It actually is the fashion capital of Southeast Asia. And it is the World Trade Center Seoul which has been the nucleus of that retail. If I look back at Sao Paulo, World Trade Center Sao Paulo, I've got 2 blocks. I've got almost 800 brands and 2 entire basement blocks of the 2 blocks which are completely full of retail. And we have taken learnings from these worldwide retail, from the World Trade Center, wherein we have even the art galleries, we have the, if I go back to World Trade Center, New York, which is the, after 9/11, which we've opened, we have art galleries there, not in the office space, in the retail space. And they're also teaching you how to paint. So it's a very, very dynamic space, whether it's plazas, whether it is small or anchor spaces. And yes, the place that we would be would drive the kind of brands that we would be having.
You know, coming to you, Deepak ji, you are essentially very well known, well established in the residential sector, particularly with lots of projects in the mid-market and premium segment. And you recently we've launched a new project on the Noida Expressway, which is a very niche development in premium retail with the mixed use with offices as well. So from being a very largely residential focused developer, what is your vision when you saw of building retail in a market in Noida where there isn't retail? I mean, it's not something which is a new market where there's no retail as well. But I'm sure there is something which you have seen as a developer, particularly leading into the market from a fusion, in a vision perspective, in saying, what is the need for building world-class retail and what's the way forward? So what's your personal take of having invested now in retail, per se?
Thank you, Pankaj. Good evening, all. The basic idea was to evolve and not only remain a residential developer, but taste the other side of the real estate. Real estate is not only residential, it constitutes retail, commercial office spaces, institutions, hospitality. So a lot of gambits are there. So far, we've been making our footprints only in residential. So we thought, why not to expand, venture out? So that's the plan. And why we thought of a need is that we found that there are retail spaces, there are high streets, there are closed boxes, there are open boxes. So we took a chance, we said, let us do the learning and get into the commercial real estate as well, because all my friends sitting on the dais, off the dais, been telling us, come to retail, come to commercial, there is a good bandwidth, and since you have the thought process where you deliver a good quality of a real estate development to a consumer, I'm sure there is a typical and peculiar demand lying existing, and you should be able to make a mark in that. So this was the thought process where we shifted and we said, let us do it. So we did a couple of developments, one in Noida, one in Kota. So currently the journey is on. We have reached a level where we have done the development. Both the properties are ready for occupation, ready for fit outs. So right now, what is my learning is that the market is very dynamic, as the industry veterans have just said, that 17 years, 15 years, 11 years of experience of marketing, understanding, and changing dynamics of retail. So the learning is coming from these veterans who've been there in the market. I've been regularly discussing with them. But what I've seen is that everything coexists. So that's what we said, that if everything coexists, so why not to create a mixed development model where we offer a touch of retail, touch of entertainment, and a commercial office space. So that has been the journey. Now when we say that we have two kind of customer class, one is called B2B and B2C. Currently I'm handling B2B, business to business. So today, since the mall is ready, so I'm looking out for occupiers. So there's a lot of discussion happening and understanding the game and the bandwidth of how the retailer wants, what the retailer wants, what the peculiar demand is. As you said that we all need to study the catchment area. Though I did a lot of study in catchment area through IPCs, but it is very interesting fact that every brand has got its own self-styled catchment area study. And there's a big mismatch in what one retailer says and the other retailer says. So, but I appreciate, and there is no denial of the fact that yes, everybody has got their own in-depth study and they've been very successful in the market. So as a developer, what I'm offering is a blank slate, and we need to be very adaptive and dynamic, as just said by Abhishek and the other panelists, that we need to be very adaptive and dynamic because every month the requirements are changing. Somebody is coming with a large format, somebody is coming with a small format. So innovation is the name of the game. In last 1.5 years of COVID turnaround, speaking to the brands, understanding the dynamics, whether the investment is to be made by me or by them, how the ball is to be rolling. So it's a wonderful learning curve. But what I'm very sure of is that there's been a lot of if and but about what is the right mix. there are a lot of thought process that this is right or this is wrong. I say everything is right. What is most important is you should deliver it right, and you should not stop at delivery. You should nurture it right as well, because there's a long life associated with a real estate development. So commercial real estate, the dynamics are changing every 6 months. Consumer tastes, preferences, brands, innovation style is changing. So we need to be very adaptive, very dynamic, and that is the journey I've been looking into. And I'm very sure everything will survive and will make a mark. Only thing is, you have to keep your eyes and ears open. As he said, learning is every day, and listening is very important. We need to listen to the brands, we need to listen to the operators, and at the same time, we need to listen to the consumers as well to make a mark.
Perfect. Great. You know, coming to you, Abhishek, Trehan, in this case. Gurgaon was really the starting point of what we call the organized retail journey in India in terms of malls, really. You know, really the first mall actually came up was in Gurgaon and one small one in Bombay. You entered into a market, and you built an open format high street plaza retail, which is very successful when I look at the brand mix. What is your, I mean, there must be a thought process. You must have identified this as an opportunity to get into a market which has got seen so much of retail. At one stage, it was said the rise of the mall and the death of the malls was actually Gurgaon, right, Abhishek? At one time, it was the death of malls as well. And there has not been a dearth of retail space. I'm not talking about quality retail space, but dearth of retail space was never a problem in Gurgaon. But quality was always a problem. Yeah. But you went and identified in this market, identified a new product and said, let's create a neighborhood, high quality, premium, open format retail. What's been the success story? What made it work? And what is the way forward in assets like this? What's your view?
I feel, I think everybody knows that neighborhood centers are definitely going to work irrespective of the evolution of retail. Because that is something that offers convenience. It offers the first mover advantage for a retailer to actually captivate a market which is untapped. And for people who are in the neighborhood, they wouldn't have a chance. Otherwise, they will have to plan a trip to do a destination shopping or actually plan on weekends. But when you have such growing markets, that gives you an opportunity. For us, I think it was, to be honest, we just started with the economics. But then when we started building, the market wasn't good. So, you know, and we were not able to, we had a strata model to start with. But when it did not capitalize and the market went bad, we thought about it and we said, you know, why not create an actual experience center, because there is a good demand here for retailers. So we started building a lease team and contacting retailers. We did few leases like Inox and Reliance Smart. They were the first ones there. Like what Abhishek said, you know, I mean, his story is very different. Obviously, his evolution of actual mall retail in NCR. But in that neighborhood, there was nothing like it. So we got encouraged. We stopped selling inventory. And whatever we sold earlier was also leased back or bought back, or, you know, we had leasing rights. Slowly and slowly, we got so much interest that it became an F&B hub. Today we have all QSRs. I mean, name it: Starbucks, McDonald's, Haldiram's, you know, Domino's, Pizza Hut, KFC. Everything is there. So for people there, they don't need to travel so far. It's a neighborhood center. It has the convenience of having a supermarket. It has an apparel anchor which is value-based, so that, you know, when you need something for daily use, you don't want to actually travel so far and get that daily use item. Like kids' clothes, you know, they have an expiry date. I mean, it's only for a year or two. And you need a chemist, you need, you know, a salon, so it just came out together in some things were planned from our side, and some things, like Abhishek said, you have to change, cut and do jugaad, and you know, it works out. So eventually the zoning shaped, and we were so successful that we thought that we can do this. And so we identified another market which is similar to what is the new Gurgaon. And now that is Noida Extension. So we saw the dearth of planned retail there. Although there is so much retail development, but everything is cut and sold. And there is no concept of, zoning or anchoring and creating the parking infrastructure and circulation. So we ventured there, and we now, I'll say, we are 10 times better than what we did before. And
Is
yeah.
there a formula in terms of for a neighborhood retail center in terms of the sizing and the square footage it should be built? Is there a formula to it, or is it different market to market?
I think it is not a large box retail for sure. There are no flagships. There are no stores which are like one in that whole area. So you'll have to obviously build smartly with their small shops, and they can be clubbed together. So we don't work like a mall at all. I think it's very different from the floor plate of a mall. They are small shops. They are also shops which are backside, which are reasonable for people who want to conduct their own business, first-time businesses, and they're smaller formats, and anchors are small. So now you know that Decathlon is coming with a smaller format. You know that a lot of other players are coming up with those smaller formats. So these smaller formats put in, and so sizes in malls are very big. They're mostly big shops, and they can't be divided.
And the format of the entire center, what it be? It will be like a 2-3 lakh square feet center, is a 5 lakh square feet center. How typically what format does? Like what's the current size of your center, the first one which you built in Sector 84?
So now we're building a 500,000 square feet of retail neighborhood center, and I think we are ambitious.
And the first one was?
First one was close to 3 lakh square feet, but that included, so that was around 2 lakh square feet of retail, pure retail.
Pure. And if you were to relook back, because when you started building, you were not sure of what you were
For sure,
building.
we could have done.
So you could have built larger.
Yeah.
So you can actually build a 350 to 400,000 square feet of open format high street retail, which is well planned per se.
Absolutely.
There's a market for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there is always that looming threat that when there will be somebody who will come and build a next door, maybe 5 years later, a very big size mall down the road.
True.
Do you think it'll ever compromise your center, which you already built, or this will already be well established and people will be so used to it that for regular, they will come to you, this center, and when it's a more destination or a very large buying, they would go put to the big box mall?
I think the most important thing is to pass the threshold. I mean, with the threshold, I mean that you have to have the 5 or 6 key anchors, F&B that you need. Once you have crossed that threshold, a cinema, an FEC, there is very little that something could come up and really, kind of challenge your mall. I mean, they could be complementing for some other things, but I think we feel that if you have the right brand mix and the key anchors, even if one leaves, 2 leaves, you still have those 3 or 4 anchors who will support you, and then you have the key F&B. So it's all about the product mix, and you have to race to it. You can't be thinking that I have to fill my mall in 3 years. So like the market is changing. We have competition as well now there. We were the first movers, but now they are full box retail, air-conditioned malls that are coming up. But then we are getting that advantage because we have that brand mix and we are at that threshold.
You know, Abhishek, you're building an outlet center in Delhi. A couple of years back, there was a big story about outlet centers in India will work, and it will work. That kind of story, when we went to retailers, and this is in one of my previous organizations, and we started doing a feasibility and saying, okay, an outlet center, who will occupy? The retailers said there is no demand for an outlet center because the reason is outlet centers are always looked at as locations which are secondary on a very cheap high street, which is very accessible. You know, you see it partly down the road, across from this hotel, you know, there used to be a outlet center market, high street, which got inorganically developed. And most of the cities saw this inorganic development of outlets coming in, and it became more of a stock disposable stores. This was all about liquidation of stores and not about creating an experience there, because the store wasn't great, the merchandise was not always full. And then the online business came in, and online business at least started with a lot of surplus stock disposal as well. But then again, we've seen particularly developers like you, grade A developers who build high quality shopping centers now going and building in an NCR market and outlet center. So is there a new wave which is coming in? There's a new something which you are seeing in the outlet center market, which you're talking, because apart from you now hearing this concept of outlet centers coming in across the country, particularly, but the vision to develop it has always been by the grade A developer who's built lifestyle quality centers per se.
So आउटलेट सेंटर का वेव नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि इतना स्टॉक ही नहीं है. अगर पूरी सिटी में एक आउटलेट सेंटर चल जाए उतने जितना स्टॉक भी ब्रांड का आ जाए शॉप के अंदर, दैट्स अ बिग डील. सो नाउ दैट वी आर टॉकिंग टू brands where we are doing an A+B kind of a center, whichever brand we go to, this is the first question we ask: will you have enough merchandise in the shop? Because if you don't have the merchandise, what are you going to sell? And with online being online, a lot of merchandise which is not being sold in that season or of previous year or seconds, वो online में अभी तक सबको आदत लग चुकी है बेचने की. So will they have enough stock? So to come to your wave वाला question, wave बहुत बड़ी ये बन नहीं सकती क्योंकि इतना स्टॉक ही नहीं है लोगों के पास. सेकेंड थिंग, आउटलेट सेंटर अगर आप इंटरनेशनली देखोगे तो एक बहुत बड़ा आउटलेट सेंटर का एक यूनिक चीज़ है दैट ऑल formats are large size. A Nike store will be 20,000 square feet, an Under Armour store will be 10,000 square feet, a Lululemon store will be 5,000 square feet, and so on and so forth. In India, again, because of the stock, they can't open a 20,000 square feet store, so that will get reduced to 5,000 square feet. A regular apparel store like a US Polo or an Arrow will come down to 800,000 square feet. So it's not really an outlet format में उसको इसलिए नहीं कह सकता because internationally वो नहीं है outlet का मतलब होता है बड़ी दुकानें, सस्ता सामान और lot of merchandise भरा हुआ है, मतलब it is packed, जो इंडिया में नहीं.
lot of the international outlet center, particularly in the US and Europe, are driven by tourists as well. Particularly in India, we are not a tourist country.
Exactly. So इंडिया में चलो टूरिस्ट तो बहुत दूर की बात है कि टूरिज्म फ्रेंडली होगा और वो टूरिस्ट सेफ फील करेगा इंडिया आने में और फिर वो टूरिज्म से हमारा रिटेल बिजनेस इंक्रीज होगा. सो दैट इज़ अ विश लिस्ट वी हैव बीन थिंकिंग, वो 10 साल से हम सोच ही रहे हैं. बट इंडिया में अपनी मार्केट भी है जिसको डिस्काउंटेड मर्चेंडाइज चाहिए, बट वो मर्चेंडाइज बहुत लिमिटेड है. सेकेंड, ट्रांसपोर्ट बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, तो हम बहुत दूर नहीं जा सकते. सो इफ़ आई थिंक कि मैं मानेसर के आगे जाके एक आउटलेट सेंटर बना दूँ एंड आई एक्सपेक्ट पीपल टू कम ऑन अ वीक डे, नहीं होगा. How many weekends does he want to give for shopping? Again a question mark, because if he has to drive 100 रुपए के पेट्रोल के साथ वो शायद आउटलेट वाला आदमी नहीं ड्राइव करेगा. और पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं है कि मैं मानेसर तक कंफर्टेबली जा सकूं. सो दैट मेड अस थिंक दैट जसोला इज़ द राइट location for an outlet where it is approachable, connected to the metro, not a very big center. It's about 300,000 square feet center, so we keep the brands tight. We keep the offering tight, more relevant. Bring in, within that 300,000, we are doing a big cinema, which is 10 screens. We are doing a full-fledged food court, which is 500-seater. We are doing 10 restaurants. So actually, if you see, the size of retail is about 120,000 square feet only, or maybe 150,000 square feet. With brands, for example, a Nike would probably look at 7,000 square feet and not at 20,000 square feet. The good part is that the unorganized sector, जहाँ पे ये outlet stores या A+B stores चल रहे हैं, उनके numbers इतने ज़्यादा promising हैं कि अगर उनको एक organized environment दे दिया जाए सही location पे, they'll perform wonders. So there are brands which are, मैं A category की अभी बात नहीं करूँगा, but B category brands हैं जो outlet की एक शॉप से 1-1 करोड़ रुपए महीने का धंधा निकाल रहे हैं. Which is unorganized, no parking, no power backup, no AC, no service, stray dogs on the street. उसके बावजूद अगर वो 1 करोड़ का धंधा वहाँ निकाल रहा है, तो अगर आप उसे एक ऑर्गेनाइज सेंटर दोगे, उतना तो कर ही लेगा, अगर ज़्यादा नहीं तो. And if he does those numbers, it's a viable project. So, one, size has to be limited because offering नहीं, outlet is what shopping centers were 15 years ago. We are still understanding कि ब्रांड कौन होगा, मार्केट क्या होगी, कितना मर्चेंडाइज होगा, कितने ब्रांड्स ओके हैं करने के लिए. क्या वो premium outlet हो सकता है? If it can be a premium outlet, not all brands are okay with doing an outlet. So if you, there may be some premium brands which will say, I'm okay to do an outlet. Some will say, even if I have to throw away stock, I will not put it. I will not do an outlet. So that's another challenge. And once you start calling it an outlet, you can't bring in mainline because wo to aayega nahi. So you have to be very sure that the number of brands with the right size, with the enough merchandise, agar aap la sakte ho, yes. Which is not easy because everybody is learning on that.
It has to be an accessible distance to my
And
catchment.
accessible.
It cannot be an outskirts.
Like I said, Jasola is 30 minutes drive from anywhere in South Delhi.
Yeah.
20 minutes drive from Noida. 40 minutes from
Faridabad is-
Ghaziabad, East
Faridabad.
Delhi, Faridabad. So we were lucky to find that location which is as far as it should be, as close as it should be. And that's why we are executing that. But getting that kind of location and being lucky with it is difficult.
In the solar. There's already
so
an existing...
Jasola is known as an outlet market, but what we are doing is, we are not doing the same brands, we are doing premium outlets. So
Getting the premium most in the market
yes,
today.
yes.
And inching towards bridge. To
Yeah. So
French
that
brands as well.
the differentiation is what we want to offer in an organized environment.
So you could get a one season old Ralph Lauren T-shirt, which you typically may not get anywhere else. You
Yeah.
get it
So
in
if we do a collective outlet, it has all those, things. A collective outlet is already operational in Southex. So, and they've seen the numbers there. So the market is there. Is there enough merchandise? Is there enough brands? Those will develop over a certain time.
Great. Thank you so much. That brings to the end of the session. I think we got some good insights, understanding from all the panelists in terms of there is new formats of retail. As Abhishek last told us, there is some opportunity if you do it well located, well thought through outlet centers. Lifestyle centers, as Yogeshwar mentioned, will continue to evolve. And this journey will continue to evolve right from thinking whether to make a lot more smaller format stores, then later consolidating to make larger experience stores. As Khair mentioned about that it's all about the development in terms of what you bring more to the table. It's not about just putting retail stores. It's all about creating customer experiences. Like you talk about retail, you talk about even art galleries being part of the World Trade Center. And as Abhishek mentioned about the fact that the reason they've entered into identified this opportunity is because the catchment exists. You could build a high quality open format retail. It's not necessarily has to be a big box mall. But if you build a high quality retail, you can get the best of tenants like Starbucks and Decathlon and Reliance, and the cinema is also there. And as Mr. Kapoor also mentioned that from a residential developer perspective, it was always attractive to look at a new real estate asset class, and that was the idea, was to get into build a high quality, because they always believed that they were delivering, and customers giving their feedback that you deliver very high quality residential. So why not give that same experience in an asset class like retail as well, right? Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just take 30 seconds. It's very clear that consumer is out there. Consumer is established that there are enough consumers to support any shopping center. Every shopping center has a different challenge as compared to location, catchment, other issues, tenant mix and all that. However, consumers are already there. E-commerce has proved that. So that one thing is already sorted. Second is technology, which is also very important these days. However, even before technology is the talent, which I mean all of you and all of us here. So unless the talent is not right, technology will not work and we will not be able to reach out to consumers. So putting together a good shopping center, there are many vectors, many reasons. But one thing is sure, that you have to stand out. There are many good catchments having bad centers. There are many bad centers in a good catchment, and other vice versa. So each catchment has to be done justice to with the help of the talent. Capital will follow. Capital is also very important, and patient capital, especially in the shopping center. But capital will follow, and the talent is the key, which I really want to compliment all of us.
Thank you so much, Yogeshwar. I think absolutely rightly said, it's also the right talent which will drive this entire journey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much of the audience.